Welcome back to HQ Spotlight. We're going to the college ranks. Bill Belichick said back during spring training that success in 2025 for UNC looks like, quote, taking advantage of every opportunity and making the most of it. Well, UNC's been taking advantage of the offseason by boosting their roster a bit, earning the 29th best signing class according to our partners at 24/7 Sports. That class most notably headlined by the quarterback transfer in Gio Lopez, as the Tar Heels hope to set the tone of the season early, starting week 1 against TCU. So to talk Chapel Hill, we got Mr. Chapel Hill himself joining us, our college football expert analyst, Chip Patterson. Chip, it still doesn't really feel real. It doesn't feel right yet that Bill Belichick is going to be leading the charge at UNC this season, but he's made the most of it so far. However, he's kind of got a blueprint for how all this thing works. He's kind of following in the footsteps of legend Bill Walsh, who made the transition back to college back in the early 90s. We saw how it worked out for Walsh. I don't know. What do you think about Bill Belichick taking on this next chapter of his career?
Well, the biggest key is going to be whether he's going to be able to communicate to a different age group, to a different type of player, because the NFL player, the player who spent their entire life to go make football their job, is a little bit different in terms of the internal motivation, skill set, IQ, all those things than what he's going to be able to have. Because what I've seen, and Haley, we know, it has been a tumultuous couple of months on the Bill Belichick beat. There have been a lot of non-football, off-field talking points that have really distracted from even us understanding what North Carolina is going to be. But what I've seen in recent weeks, especially with the impact in recruiting, the football camps on campus, is Bill Belichick is getting back to what Bill Belichick just does best, and that's talk ball, that's teach ball, that's be a football guy. And so we're getting away from the tabloids, we're getting more to that practice turf. And so if Bill Belichick can be able to get everything in his brain properly communicated to these players, then I do think we are going to see, much like Bill Walsh when he went to Stanford, one of the brightest football minds in the sports history at any level being able to better the college team that he is taking over.
Taking a look there at Bill Walsh's record at Stanford through the years. Certainly, like I mentioned, a good blueprint if you're Bill Belichick. But something you mentioned, Chip, is this new era of college football, which we'll get to in a minute. But I do want to talk about the quarterback room for a minute. And I remember, I love doing these segments because it sort of lets you go back and reminisce about how we were feeling at this time last year. And last year, there was a lot of excitement around Max Johnson, the transfer coming in. We know that first game, he got injured. It was pretty tough, so he's still working back. So then they bring in the other guy, Gio Lopez. How are you feeling about the quarterback room right now for UNC?
Uncertain and not stable, but there is a bright outlook. There are a lot of different ways that you can tell me this story ends with North Carolina getting good quarterback play. Throw in there Ryan Brown, who showed up for spring practice, then left after. So Gio Lopez comes in from South Alabama. He was very good, not only for South Alabama, but when South Alabama played Power 5 competition. That is something that Bill Belichick and this coaching staff really looked at. The other part that Bill Belichick played a big role in was making sure that they were able to keep the 4-star freshman quarterback Bryce Baker, somebody who committed to Mac Brown, was a little bit uncertain if he was going to stay committed. The hire Bill Belichick gets announced. He remains a part of the recruiting picture. And then, as you mentioned, Max Johnson, someone who I think is your not break glass in case of emergency, but very, very high floor proposition, because you know you can trust him. You know he's reliable. Once he's back to full health, they know that Max Johnson gives them that high floor. Gio Lopez, who is the transfer from South Alabama, Bryce Baker, the true freshman, uncertain. But again, high floor, bright outlook. There's just a lot that needs to be sorted out in fall camp, so we don't really know what it's going to look like right now.
Well, look, if there's anyone who knows how to sort out an unknown quarterback, it is Bill Belichick. How we know Tom Brady grew into the player that he is today. But still, Chip, a lot of concern about how Bill would sort of take this next step in college football. You've got NIL, you've got the transfer portal, a lot of things that a lot of these guys have said, I want no part in. But Bill obviously has leaned into that, particularly on the offensive and defensive line. So who are some new names that you expect to be impact players there in the trenches?
Haley, I love this because they have been so secretive. Shocker, right? I mean, they didn't have numbers at spring practice. They're trying to keep everything under wraps. But here's what I can do. Here's some numbers that matter to me. It is the heights and it is the weights of the offensive and defensive line, because Bill Belichick and the general manager at North Carolina, Michael Lombardi, where do they come from? The NFL. And what does the NFL do more than anything else? Draft players from the SEC, draft linemen from the SEC. So Bill Belichick and this staff, they've gone into the transfer portal and they've just said, we want to get bigger. just heights and weights. We want to be able to be dominant. This is the words that Michael Lombardi uses, in the middle of the field. And so that's what we've seen. We see them go out 6'5", 6'6", 315, 330 pounds. These are offensive and defensive lines that have some real size to them that doesn't really match necessarily what we saw at the end of the Mac Brown tenure. And I think these are very important moves that show us that these are NFL minds that have traditionally been looking at college football and finding that what they value more than anything is going and get those big bodies to be able to come in. And I think that that's something that's going to be really defining for what North Carolina football can be on the field.
Yeah, they've added quite a few offensive and defensive linemen, as well as some tight ends, some wide receivers, and we talked about the quarterback and the running back room. So it really seems like UNC is not shying away from how you have to compete in 2025. I'm just curious, Chip, when it comes to some of those new additions, who's going to be an impact player or players for them to kind of make it worth their time?
Yeah, this is an interesting spot to look at because I don't think they did enough at wide receiver and running back to be able to create an offense that is really explosive. Like Isaiah Johnson is a very good player, someone who I think could be around at the wide receiver position, somebody who could end up having an impact. Kobe Paysor is another player who has been around, redshirt senior for a very long time. Caleb Hood, the running back, another player who's been around for a while. But Haley, these are not names that I think intimidate opposing defensive coordinators. Now, they can develop, they can thrive in this system. We're talking about running backs and wide receivers. They can be productive. They can have successful seasons. What I'm telling you right now is that in terms of talent and in terms of priorities, they have prioritized the middle of the field in a way that I think has left the skill position something to be desired. And here's why I think that's interesting. I think this is going to be a ball control team. I think this is going to be an offense that's going to try to not make mistakes. I think this is an offense that's going to be able to run the football, play a little field position, play the time of possession game, and then try to go win you by executing the fine details. Because this is not an offense that can line up and say we're going up tempo, throwing it 50 times a game. They just don't have the personnel. So for all the secrecy they're trying to have, Haley, I think I've cracked the code. They're big in the middle of the field. They don't intimidate me at the wide receiver position. They're going to run the dang ball and play some good dang defense. Listen,
it is hard to fill the hole that Omarion Hampton left from a year ago as well when we talk about the running back room and him making an impact at the next level. But it can't just be the run game. You got to have the pass game and the middle of the field all sorted out if they're going to be successful. So that brings me to my next question, Chip. We saw what happened in Mac Brown's final season. UNC finished 6-7. They opened 2025 against Minnesota. What do you think? Have all these changes been enough for them to have a successful season?
I do. Success defined by the win total. I think they will be slightly over their 7.5. The schedule just sets up with so many great opportunities against teams that have equal or lesser talent in the ACC. Now, I've got them losing that game to TCU. Sonny Dykes, Josh Hoover, the Frogs are going to come in very aware of the spotlight they will get being opposite Bill Belichick in the opener. Then you string together a couple wins. And Haley, this is what's tricky. So they've got a bye both before and after Clemson. I don't think that helps them, especially noting that I have Clemson as a loss. Then you have to go to Berkeley to play Cal. That's kind of a one loss becomes two situation. But then you get to that back half of the schedule. Those are teams that I project to be near the bottom of the ACC standings. So they will rack up a whole lot of wins. And then I've got a loss in the rivalry game as Dave Doran has had a lot of success against the Tar Heels in his tenure with the Wolfpack. That has us as 8-4 overall, slightly over on the win total. And very happy to have 8 wins, but they're going to know by the end of that season, they still have another offseason of roster building before they can contend for an ACC championship.
No college football playoff for Chip Patterson when it comes to the Tar Heels, but still a successful season when it comes to the wins and losses. Chip, good to see you, my friend. Can't wait for those college football Saturdays coming up here before you know it. Hey, when it comes to college football, the Cover 3 podcast is our Bible. The latest lesson focusing on Rutgers as Bud Elliott sits down with our 24/7 sports crew. Scan that QR code, get prepped now so you don't have to do it later when football season kicks off.